Working in inks for me, I limit the control that I have. This is so integral to the work that I make. From one piece to another, I don't know what I'm going to end up with. I just facilitate the work to happen. I bring the tools, the surface, the medium together and create a situation. What I end up with is neither curated, known, devised. Yes, I clearly want to make a landscape. But if you break that landscape down, you will notice that it doesn't resemble one at all. It's just a series of marks that have come together to create an idea. I love working this way because, as many creatives will advocate, my attention span is limited. I get bored very easily. So to work with a medium like ink and hold the brushes and tools that I use in a certain way, this is all in aid of relinquishing my control over that work. I studied mark making for years. It's a beautiful thing to study. You realise that your brain creates 50% of the information for you. So you don't need to work as hard to create a landscape or a still life or a portrait. The beauty of that isn't that I'm work shy or that I don't have to put as much effort in. In fact, on the contrary, to work in this very fractured, abstract way, when you are trained to look at the world a certain way, it goes against everything your brain wants to create and what your body wants you to do. It's a very freeing concept to work in a way that grates against the status quo. I can create life and movement in my works in this way. I find myself visually imprisoned by my work. And I love that. I can't work any other way. Welcome to week 9. Week 9 blog. I am focusing specifically on ink. Half the work I've made is just ink. I've purchased 3 bottles. I've forgotten the names, the specific names of them, but essentially a primary red, yellow and blue, with the intention of mixing my own inks, which I did. If you don't know what ink is, it's just basically, well, I work in acrylic ink, and it's literally just really liquid acrylic paint. But the difference is the pigment in the ink is much finer and more concentrated, because obviously it's a very liquidy substance as ink, and what can happen is it can dilute it, right? So it will just be all wishy-washy and gross and opaque, which, as it happens, is a particular texture that I like. So because the bottles of ink, I mean, this is one that I've mixed, but this size is 30 mils. This is between £4.50 in the sale, or, you know, about near on £7-8 in some instances. Very expensive, and there is more shades of every colour than I can shake a stick at. So you can imagine the space, not only the space you'd need to house it, but the money you'd need to have to finance such a extravagant hobby. So I decided to mix my own. Note this though, the colours that I have mixed are purely for my use and my use only. I have not created this video to be a tutorial, and the reason is because I would need a lot more time, a lot more planning and a lot more money to buy the stuff to show you everything. I think if you're going to do a tutorial, you want to do it not only on acrylic inks, calligraphy inks, I want to see ink blocks, I want to see ink in tubes, I want to see a full thing. So this is not me giving you a lesson, and this is not me telling you this is the way it is. I've broken all the rules. This is just how I do it. I've mixed colour for years. It's not something that I had taken seriously at uni, right enough, but certainly in college, it was one of the things that they required you to do. It's a really great exercise. If you're starting out painting, mixing colour, understanding values, understanding all the monochromes, like the primary, secondary, tertiary, Itten's colour wheel, the full thing. It's a labyrinth out there of colour, specifically mixing colour. So it's well worth your time researching that. This is what I'd done. I did film it, but the film was compromised. It was in the worst light. It just didn't work out. So I thought, it's done now. These were straight from the bottle, these colours. I don't have those colours anymore because I've gone and used them all up mixing my own. So these are the swatches. It's upside down because don't ask. So I bought 3. So obviously this is the blue, the yellow, and I bought a red. I cannot remember the names because I'm an idiot. Oh, hang on a minute. Pyrrole Red is what I bought. Then I bought yellow medium azo, and then Prussian blue hue. That's what I had bought. I knew I wrote them down. I wasn't too concerned about buying a cool version and a warm version of, say, the reds. I wasn't really concerned about that, but that's certainly something you can do. I already had white, titanium dioxide white, and I already had carbon black, so I can mess with the values. I also had burnt umber and burnt sienna transparent in the Liquitex, so I could play with the tonal values within each bottle that way as well. The amount of liquid in each bottle is quite minimal, especially when you're mixing your own. So what had happened, I ended up having to sort of dilute them with water, which can dilute the pigment itself, or pigment or dye, depending on what they're made from, which can compromise the quality. But it's not a concern again of mine. This is what I'm saying. I have very specific intentional outcomes. Everything I've done is purely intentional for myself. Probably not something that I could teach, because it probably isn't. It's not right what I do. I just chuck a load of water in and it does. The outcome is as follows. This is actually that colour. Inks need shaking up. That's one thing I can teach you. This is one colour. This is actually made from white, blue and sienna. So, and that's been watered down. These are all very muddy colours. It's by design. This colour, it does not exist anymore. This was a bit of an orange that I created. It was too bright for me, didn't like it. So I chucked in some blue red, and I've kind of got this very muted mauve situation on over here. They are very wishy-washy, they are very watery, they are very muddy in some instances. The pigment has been compromised because I diluted them with water to make them go further, but I'm not fazed by that. The reason I'm not fazed is because this is what I usually do. This was actually made by the dirty water that I had kept from previous ink sessions. So I spent, I think, 5-6 hours in a single session messing around with ink, creating these types of works, doing just different experiments, yeah? Just getting to know the medium, with water, without water. But I landed on this kind of situation, and I absolutely love it. I've since made a full series, and I'm actually going to be See that? That, my friends, is a canvas. That's where we're at now. Yes, a canvas. Very, very official. This is what I call a ground. A ground is something you put down before you put anything else on. So this is what this is. I haven't put anything else on because I'm unsure, so I've just left it for a rainy day. I've done it in 3 layers. This is just 3 layers so far. So you can see you've got 1, you've got 2, and you've got 3. It gets darker over time because it's just the very thin wash layers. You can create the same with the colours that I've made here. So that's why I'm not really concerned about them being quite heavy and pigmented. You will see the difference between the colours that I've created and the colours that Liquitex have created. This is all Liquitex, but this is exactly, this is very, very pigmented. Experiment. Get a couple of inks. You don't need to get a lot of inks. Just get, you know, if you want a titanium white, a carbon black, although black does strip the life out of pigment. So just be aware of that. If you want something to create the values, then, you know, maybe think about a burnt umber. This is all very much conjecture, but it's experimenting. That's the whole takeaway from this. Just get a primary blue. Yeah, you actually, Liquitex do boxes of just like primary boxes. Just get a box. I think it's like maybe 20 quid, but you get 6 bottles in that. It's a primary set, like a primary color, and you can mix and just mix the colors. When you're working in ink, it's best to mention that for me, I like working in anything that kind of has a mind of its own. You can work with mediums to a point that you feel confident in, you know, action reaction, but ultimately there does leave room for the unknown, and I like that. It can make people feel a bit but I love it. I like mediums. When I say mediums, by the way, my husband did point out that I sometimes use art jargon, right? And that some people on here might not be that way inclined. So, materials. When I use certain materials, I use them specifically because they have a mind of their own. Watercolour can have a bit of like a mind of its own, especially when you drench it in water and blah, blah, blah. Inks, they can have a mind of their own. Charcoal and graphite powder, they definitely have a mind of their own. They go mental, but I love it. I like collaborating with my materials. That's it. It's a collaboration between me and the materials I work with, and whatever comes out, I never quite know what's going to happen, and that for me keeps me engaged. So I'm going to give you a bit of an insight on how I create my work. The tools that I'm using today is a calligraphy brush. It's specifically designed for ink. The bristles were designed to hold a lot of liquid. So this is integral to this specific process. I consciously decided to hold the brush at the end of the handle. This also limits the control that I have. The other technique I use is that I look at the inspiration I have in front of me, my sketchbook as you see there, photographs sprawled about, and I don't look at the work. This is called working blind. You'll have heard me refer to this technique a couple of times. The water is to dilute the ink. It also creates movement and life. In a sky that is rupturing with the weather system, it's also great for rain and clouds and storms and thunderstorms. You want to get life in your work. This is the way to do it. Each mark will facilitate the thing that I want it to look like. The blades of grass. I'm not doing each blade of grass. I'm giving an indication that that's what it is by the way I move the brush up and down. I'm flicking that brush. the rocks that I try and create, I use the brush in a way that loops and swoops round in a continuous formation. I don't stop moving that brush. This is so that I don't think about what I'm trying to create. I just move the brush, keep moving it. You can be semi-conscious of this, but it's important not to give yourself too much time to think. Don't think about what you're doing. Try not to be fixated on, does this look like a tree? Does this look like a cloud? It doesn't matter, because once it all comes together, you'll have an idea of where you're at. And with each piece that you do, with each piece you fail at or succeed, all of that is going in as experience, as information for the next piece. This is me balancing out the values, the lights and the darks. All I'm doing is going in with the white to try and bring things forward and knock things back. This is all about values and composition, creating balance throughout the work so that the viewer feels comfortable to move across the page and enjoy each mark that I've made. I blacked out the sky to create that balance. I'm now bringing the blades of grass forward as it's in the foreground by letting the dark dry and then going back in with the white. The best part for me is taking off the masking tape. This is when I really know whether I have succeeded in a piece or I haven't. By this time, I very rarely go back into the work, even if I don't like it, because the final act is taking off that masking tape. I will just usually sign the work and move on. I hope you found this really helpful, and I hope you start making marks of your own.